go ahead and get started?
Yes, let's go for it.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the workshop. I'm so excited for you to get to explore this content. I think you're really going to love it. My name is Michelle Levitt. I am a fractional product executive and advisor to companies looking to scale from startup to growth stage. And I am volunteering my time with Women in Product Conference this year to serve as your friendly moderator for this session. So we have Joni Hoadley today with us. Joni is a product manager coach, and she is going to lead you through a really fun and exciting workshop. So Joni, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining. I just want to say what an amazing experience it's been so far. I've been sitting in a number of workshops myself and listening to the keynotes, and I'm just feeling so just revitalized. I've heard so many wonderful stories, and I am just so honored to be with you all here today. So I'm curious, we're waiting for people to kind of trickle in. I would love if you could jump into the chat and let us know where you're joining from. I'm in Santa Barbara, California. Michelle, how about you? Where are you at?
I am in sunny and hot Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's hot there. So yeah, jump into the chat and let us know where you're joining from. And also, this is a good time to grab the workbook that we're going to be using. This is going to be a highly interactive workshop. So I just want to warn you ahead of time, definitely want to grab the workbook. It's available as a Google Doc, so you can get it using the QR code. There's a link if you scroll just below the video of us. You'll see a link there. You can click on that and grab it as a Google Doc and then save your own copy of it. So we're going to be going back and forth throughout the workshop. I'm going to be kind of facilitating a variety of different exercises, and you'll definitely need that. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, I'm going to see where we've got people coming in from. A couple of people from Austin, California, Boston, San Jose. This is wonderful. So exciting. Well, thank you all for being here. So let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to say thank you for being here. You are here because you made a decision. You are ready for some type of career transformation. That's why you're here, right? And I just want to let you know that you're not alone. There was a recent Harris poll that was conducted, and it found that almost 60% of Americans are currently considering a career change. And that is 10% higher than the pre-pandemic rate. So a big jump. And so if you are thinking, gosh, I'm ready for a change, you're not alone. I just want to let you know you're in the right place. We're going to get you to identifying your ideal role. All right. So while you're downloading the workbook, and again, if you're joining us, coming in a little late, the link to get the workbook is below the video, just below the fold of the screen there. Go ahead and download the workbook. What you're going to be learning in this workshop, first of all, I am going to help you get crystal clear on where you're at today. And this is your starting point in the next chapter of your career journey. Okay. Next, I'm going to share with you the factors and values that contribute to career success and genuine fulfillment, not just in your bank account, but in your soul. And I believe that that's probably why the vast majority of you are here today. Okay, and I'd love to, jump into the chat and feel free to share with us. We're going to do a poll in a minute to learn a little bit more about why you're here, but let me just quickly wrap up what we're going to cover. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to pull it all together, and you're going to create a career vision statement and then ultimately develop a roadmap that's going to help you figure out and achieve your ideal career. So if you're ready to get started, let's go ahead and jump into it. So I mentioned you're probably here, you made a decision, you want some kind of a career transformation, but I would love to know, and I think, do we have a poll created, Michelle? Okay, great. So if you could go into the poll, I'd love for you to let me know why you're here. Are you feeling stuck in your current company? Maybe you're stuck in your current role. Maybe you're just simply overworked and just completely done with, the long, crazy hours. Maybe you've been doing this position for a really long time and you're just ready for something new. Or maybe you've been doing this for a while, but you're not sure what your next step is. I know for a lot of people that have been doing product management, especially for a couple of years, they don't know whether they should be a manager of people or if they should become, or if they should stay as an individual contributor. Like that kind of a career path, fork in the road is very, very common. So that's something else that we can talk about. Some of you may have had all of these feelings, right? So I'm curious why you're here. Michelle, what's the best way for us to see the chat, the poll? I'm afraid if I click on anything, it's going to like interrupt my screen share. Do you know what, if I click on poll,
Yep.
will it show the results?
It will, and I can also tell you what they are so that
Okay.
you don't have to navigate away. So we have about 45% of the attendees who are not sure about their career path, and a whopping 35% who are all of the above.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you are all in the exact right place. All right. So now I want you to imagine what it would feel like to be valued, right? To be valued for the contributions that you make at work, valued for the insights that you bring to your team, valued for being your authentic self, or having time for your own needs and your well-being. Like, could you imagine what it would feel like if you had time to take care of your own health, your own well-being, and the personal side of your life, such as family and friends? I think the last 2 years have really been a big wake-up call for many of us, and we realize we need that work-life balance. Or how about imagine waking up excited about work, right? I'm sure we've all experienced that sense of dread on a Sunday night because we're not looking forward to waking up the next day. I know I've been there so many times in the past, and I think they even call it the Sunday scaries now. I think it actually has a name. What if you could wake up actually excited about work? And I think that's really why we're here today, right? So that you can wake up really excited about the work that you're doing. And that's what I want for you, and that's why we're here. So I think that sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and get going. Before we dive into the actual activities, I just want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about myself. So I am a product management coach and consultant. I help people grow and accelerate their product management careers. I also, similar to Michelle, I work with startups and I teach them how to scale and build the right products. And I've been doing product management for almost 25 years now. I got started in the late 90s when product management, like there were no courses, no books, no nothing. I am a completely, self-taught product manager. I have spent almost half of my career at Sonos building the home speakers. And fun fact, I worked at the very first internet streaming music service back in 1998. So I've worked in digital music for the vast majority of my career. And I've also often been the very first PM hired at a startup. And in that experience, I've also gone from being the first PM building kind of 0 to 1 products to scaling product management teams. I've probably interviewed and hired hundreds, if not thousands, of candidates. So I've kind of taken all of my experience over those 25 years, and I now help other people as a coach. All right. So now that you know a little bit about me, let's get to work. So again, if you haven't already done so, because we probably have people that are still joining, I think it's pretty common for people to kind of ping pong around the different workshops and see what's going on. If you're just joining, again, please download the worksheet. It's a Google Doc, so you can either download it and print it out quickly, or you can just open it up in a window on your computer. This is going to be really interactive. And so as we go through this, I want you to be kind of filling in the questions that I prompt you to go through in these various exercises. All right? Okay, so here we go. Step 1. Where are you today? So the first step in the process of defining your ideal role is to understand where you are today. So your career, I like to think of your career like a road trip. Now, you may not have a destination in mind exactly when you start a road trip, but you're starting from somewhere, right? You have a starting point. And I like to call this the baseline. And it's really important to be clear on where you are today in your career so that we can establish some parameters and really hone in on your destination. So, it's one thing, like if you imagine leaving your house today and going on a road trip, but not having any parameters at all, you could literally go just about anywhere. So, as we're defining your ideal role, we're going to identify some parameters that we can use to kind of zero in on what the ideal role looks like for you. Okay. But first, to get us in the right mindset, I want to start this exercise with a moment of gratitude. I want you to take a minute to think about your current work situation. What's the one thing that makes you truly happy about your current work situation? And if you're not working currently, think back to the last role that you had. What made you happy? And it doesn't have to be anything like monumental. It could be something as small as just grabbing a cup of coffee with your favorite coworker. But I want you to think of something that has really made you happy and enter that into the worksheet on page 3. Okay? And I'll give everybody a minute to do that. And if you want to share what you're grateful for in the chat, that would be wonderful. I would love to see what some of you are grateful for. But this is going to actually not just put us in the right mindset, but it will be used a little bit later in the workshop to identify some of your interests that will feed into defining your ideal role. Annalise says she's most grateful for her teammates. That's wonderful. Working with a great group of people. When I think back to when I worked at a company, gratitude for my team is also the thing that comes to mind. Working with people. That's what I miss most. I'm self-employed now, and I work with people one-on-one and with startup companies in a consulting capacity, but I do miss that camaraderie that comes from being part of a team. All right, so great. I hope you were all able to identify something that you're grateful for, something that really matters to you. Now, again, this step 1 in the process is about identifying where you are today. And one of the most effective things that you can do is identify what sets you apart from everyone else. Okay, it's easy as a product manager to compare ourselves to other people, compare ourselves to our peers. What I want you to really start to think about is what sets you apart? What is your unique value proposition? And in order to do that, we're going to take advantage of your strengths and opportunities. And we're going to do that using a really rapid SWOT assessment. Okay, so I know we probably all have done SWOT assessments on our products, on companies, on industries. We are going to treat ourselves like a product, and we're going to do a SWOT assessment. So the first thing we're going to do is, so if you see here, I've got a screenshot of the workbook. Head over to page 3 of the workbook, and we're going to start to peel those onion layers back to figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I'm going to walk you through each of these sections, okay? All right, so first, let's begin by identifying your strengths. These are the traits or skills that set you apart from others. And again, I mentioned this before. I want you to really think about the things that allow you to stand out away from your peers and your coworkers. Don't be shy, don't be modest, be as objective as you can. Knowing your strengths can make you happier and more fulfilled at work. I'm a big believer that playing to your strengths is one of the best ways of landing your ideal job. So if you're struggling to think of some strengths, and feel free to fill in the workbook as I'm speaking. I'm going to give everybody, I'm just going to set a timer on my phone here. I'm going to give everybody about a minute to do this. So like I said, this is a rapid interactive workshop. So just put the first thing that comes to your mind. What are you good at naturally? What comes to you easily? What types of problems or challenges do you tackle more easily than others? What are some of the things that people come to you for? Right? Like what's the thing? Like I think we all have something, at least one thing that we're so good at that people come to us for help with, right? So, what is your thing? I also encourage you to think about your strengths in relation to the other people that are around you, right? What sets you apart? What is unique about you? If you're great at project management, for example, but everybody else on your team is also great at project management, then that's not really a strength. That's more like a requirement for the job that you're in today, right? So see if you can find something that's really, truly a strength of yours. And the timer just went off. Okay. All right. Everybody do okay? All right. Okay, we're moving on. I said this is going to be really rapid, so we're going to let's keep moving. Okay, so now we're going to talk about your weaknesses. I am an advocate for strengths-based leadership. This is something I use in my coaching practice. I don't really like to spend a lot of time on weaknesses, but for the sake of this exercise, we're going to quickly talk about weaknesses, mainly because I believe it's good to kind of take the blinders off and make sure that you're being fair and that you're recognizing anything that might hold you back from your dream role. So, what are some areas in which you could improve upon or things that might hold you back from achieving your career goals? So, again, go to your worksheet and we're going to just take a moment to fill this in. I want you to think about, from your perspective as well as from the perspective of others. Have you gotten feedback in the past? Perhaps performance reviews. I think performance reviews is when we typically receive quite a bit of constructive feedback on our performance. What about, I'm just thinking hypothetically, if you're someone who aspires to become a VP perhaps or a C-level executive, but maybe you struggle with speaking in front of large groups, that would be a weakness that could definitely hold you back from getting promoted to the highest level in your organization, right? So think about those kind of things that you know that you need to work on to achieve your goals. Alternatively, another reason why I think thinking about our weaknesses does have value is because if there's something that you're not particularly good at, you can avoid that by looking for a job that doesn't require that skill, right? So an example is, let's say you're not great at project management. Maybe you don't do well when you're on a really tight deadline. You might be better off looking for a product management role at a company where you have dedicated project managers or program managers that are going to do that kind of work for you, right? So that being aware of your weaknesses can help you filter through all of the various job opportunities that are out there to find the one that's going to be best suited for you. Okay, is everybody doing all right? Anybody want to jump into the chat, give a thumbs up? How are we doing? Everybody keeping up? It's a little hard because we're not seeing your faces. So, okay, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, so opportunities. Let's look at some of the external factors that you can take advantage of that might open up some opportunities that you weren't really thinking about. So for example, during the COVID crisis, health tech and remote learning companies were booming and they continue to be really, really thriving businesses. Is there a new technology in your industry? Are there trends that you're seeing that you would like to take advantage of? Another type of opportunity is, do you have a network of strategic contacts that can really help you or offer good advice? These are all things that you should be thinking about as you define your ideal role. Okay, so go ahead and if you think of anything in this regard, anything that kind of lights you up, go ahead and enter that in the worksheet. All right. Katerina says, this is great so far. Thanks. Thanks for the feedback, Katerina. All right, so now we're ready for step 2. Okay, so now that we know where you are today, what's your destination, right? I said earlier, there's so many different directions you could take when you're going on a road trip. The same applies to your career. I did a search on LinkedIn 2 days ago for product manager, and there were like 250,000 positions open. Like that is so overwhelming. If you're looking for a job, it's not realistic to apply to every single one of them, right? Like again, we need those parameters so that you can find your ideal role. So, and in a road trip, if you have no idea about where you want to go, how can you possibly get there, right? So having clarity on your ideal role makes it easy to identify the perfect job when it appears. So in this part of the workshop, step 2, we are going to define your ideal work environment, and we're going to get clarity on your values and interests that will help you decide where you want to be in this next chapter of your life. All right. So if anybody has joined, I haven't mentioned the workbook in a few minutes, but I encourage you to download the workbook. The link is just below the video if you scroll down. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Michelle just put it in the chat as well. If you've joined late, get the workbook. We're kind of we're working through this interactively. So go ahead and get that opened up on your screen. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump to step 2 in the workbook. What gets you excited? What gives you energy? What types of problems do you enjoy solving? So remember when we did the gratitude exercise at the very beginning, what was it that made you feel grateful? So many of you mentioned your teams, right? Your teams are the things that made you grateful. So I would put that down in the workbook, right? We're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but before we get there, I want you to be thinking about what are the characteristics of those teams that you enjoy working with so much? What is it about them that gives you that energy? Right? Were there any other examples that anybody would like to share from that gratitude exercise that we can use as an example of how that might apply to defining your ideal role? And I'm just going to if anybody wants to drop in the chat and share, I'll give you my own example. So a few years ago, I was being interviewed for a podcast about product management. And I realized while I was being interviewed that I am happiest when I'm locked in a room with a developer and a designer and we're brainstorming solutions to complex customer problems. Like that, to me, that's when I am in the zone and I'm happiest. And that realization led me to switch from being a people manager to going back to being an individual contributor. And I became a principal product manager because I realized that I missed that rolling up of the sleeves and just, building the product so much. And that is what lights me up, that managing people, at that point in my career just wasn't the right role for me. So it was a really big aha moment. So again, think about what types of activities get you excited. And so this is now question 5 and 6 in the workbook. Okay, so jump to the workbook. So let's see. I see Pallavi says solving customer problems that I care about and can relate to. That's good. Nandi says, I love making things easier for users. Okay, that's great. So working on user experience is probably very important to you. Breaking ambiguity, okay, focusing more on diving deep into features. Okay, these are all really, really great things. Okay, so if you were another example about things that can get you excited, these can be things outside of work as well, because you can find a role related to just about any hobby or interest these days, right? If you love meditating, there are so many meditation services out there, right? Headspace and Calm. Or perhaps you're a parent and you find the future of how our children are taught ripe for disruption, right? Like I know during COVID, watching my kids doing remote learning, I was like, there has got to be a better way of doing this, right? And so there are companies that are out there today trying to make e-learning for children way more effective. So think about the things that you're interested in. If you love investing, maybe you think crypto is fascinating, right? There's no end to the subjects that you can really dig into. And I really encourage you to harness your curiosity to define your ideal role. I think curiosity is so important, especially if you're a product manager. I think that's one of the skills that makes for a great product manager. So try to harness your curiosity and see if you can identify some different subject matters that you're really interested in. Okay, and go ahead and put those in the question 5 and 6 in the workbook. All right, and I mentioned earlier there are over 250,000 jobs on LinkedIn for product managers. This is really where, like, having some idea of your interest is going to help you narrow that down to a much more manageable number. All right, so this is also a really good time to think about the kind of company that you want to work for. I know somebody mentioned they like working on making things easier for users. So you, for example, might be interested, Nandi, in working for a B2C company that's consumer facing because you're making products that your end users are actually going to be using. Do you want to work for a startup? Do you like working at a startup, or do you prefer a more established company, right? A scrappy startup versus an established company where you're going to have a lot more support, and you'll be surrounded by people that you can learn from. Those are two very, very different environments. And it's really important, I think, that you think through which of those you can be happiest in, right? Do you want to work for a small company? Do you want to work for a big company? Maybe in between. I know many people have worked for early stage startups and they got burned because the companies ran out of money, and they're like, you know what? At this point in my career, I want to work for a company that's at least Series B, if not more established. So think about, how important is the stability of the business to you, given where you are in your life. You might be a little bit more willing to take on a risky, a risky role at a company that, has just started with some seed funding, or you may need the security that comes with a more established company. These are important considerations when you're thinking about your ideal career. Another one that we're all very fortunate to be able to think about is, where do you want to work? Do you want to work remotely? Do you want to work in person? Or maybe you want hybrid? I know I love working remotely, and for me, that's a deal breaker. If I were to get a job offer from a company and they told me that I would have to be on site every day, I don't think I could accept a job like that. Being able to work remotely is very important to me at this stage in my life, because I need that flexibility to take care of my family, right? Many people are really missing that connection to their teammates, and they want to be on site. So think about what's important to you and go ahead and answer question 7 based on those considerations. Okay, another related question to that is workplace culture. So I mentioned this is what I want to talk about. For all of you who said you're grateful for your teammates, this is the time to think about why you love your teammates so much. What is it about those people that you enjoy working with? What kind of vibe does your team have, right? What kind of energy is it? Do you all brainstorm really well together? Do you enjoy going out for coffee together? What is it that you enjoy the most about your teams? And if you can't think of anything that you like necessarily about the people you work with, because let's face it, many of you may say, like, I don't actually like being around people. Like if you're an introvert and you just want to be able to do your own thing, that's great too. Think about what you don't want. I encourage you to get really clear about what you don't want. I find that knowing what you don't want in a workplace environment can be just as helpful as knowing what you do want. Okay. And if anybody has any questions about any of this, feel free to jump into the chat and let us know. Okay. All right. And so another important factor is what your timeline is, right? Like most road trips, we do have a sense of timing. Some road trips might take a day, some road trips might take 2 weeks. So what is your ideal time frame? If you could wave a magic wand and be in a different role than where you are today, when would that be? Today, yesterday, 6 months from now? And there's no wrong or right answer. It's really just, helping you come up with a plan that is achievable. So go ahead and put your answer in the worksheet. And then we're going to move on to what I think might be one of the most important aspects of identifying your ideal role. Okay, so if you're multitasking, if you've got other stuff going on, this is the time that I need you to come back to me right now, because this is probably what I would say is kind of the highlight of the workshop. We are going to really dive into your values. And I believe that this is what is going to make or break your ideal job. Okay, so finding a role where you can be your authentic self at a company that is aligned with your personal values is critical to having your ideal job. Okay, I'm going to say that again because I want that to sink in for you. Finding a role where you can be your authentic self at a company that is aligned with your values is critical to having your ideal job. Okay, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples to help you understand what I mean by this. So I worked with a client last year who was interviewing with many, many companies. She is a principal, I should say she was a principal product manager with over 10 years of experience. And, she was getting interviews every single day. Plenty of companies were interested in her. One of the companies she interviewed with was showing signs of bro culture. And as someone looking for a company that supports working parents, that kind of bro culture was a big red flag for her. So despite a very attractive job opportunity, she ultimately chose to withdraw from consideration for a director level position because she knew that work-life balance and the flexibility to take care of her growing family, those were her top priorities. And she was not confident that she was going to be able to align her values with the culture of that company. Okay. Another person I know joined a company last year that was not LGBTQ friendly. And they didn't know it going in, but very quickly realized that they did not feel safe showing up as their authentic self. And they also really struggled to establish trust and credibility because they felt like they couldn't be who they are. They were pretending to be somebody else. And it was a big problem. So thankfully, after a few short months, he left the company and found a role at another company that was completely different, very inclusive, very supportive of everyone. And he's so happy now. But it's, you you really need to understand and be crystal clear on your values and be very selective in the companies that you consider for your next job. Okay, so we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I just want this to sink in for everybody. Life is too short to work for a company that will not support who you are and the season of life that you're in. Okay, I'm a big believer in this, and this is what I want for all of you. Life is too short. Okay, that's why I'm here. That's why I am helping you define your ideal role so that you can find a job that supports you for who you are and for the season of life that you're in. Okay, so let's keep jamming on this topic of values, because I also think that your work-life balance is also extremely important. Your well-being is also extremely important. So think about your needs. What do you need in the season of life that you're in? Are you at a point in your life where you can work 60 hours a week? Or maybe you have family obligations and you need more flexibility, right? So I want you to go to page 7 and fill in question 10 with everything you need in order to be able to do your best work. Okay? I mentioned earlier, for me, it's a deal breaker not to be able to work remotely, right? Like I have kids, I need that flexibility. I like to be able to hop on my bike and do a Peloton workout during the day, right? Like these are things that matter in order for me to have that work-life balance. So what about you? What are your deal breakers? I'd love, if anybody wants to share their deal breakers in the chat, that might, inspire some of the other people in the audience. But go ahead and hop over to question 10 and fill that in. Like this is like the bucket list of your ideal job. And I want you to treat this really seriously when you think about the kind of companies that you want to work for. All right. Okay. So now that we know where you are today and where you want to be, we're going to put it all together and create your personal career roadmap. Okay. I'm seeing flexible work coming up a lot. Yeah, it's important. Okay. So using the results from your workbook as a guide, I want you to create your career vision statement by filling this section in on page 8 of the workbook. And you can see this is kind of like a Mad Lib type of activity. So I want you to fill in the sections in pink with the answers that you came up with throughout the workbook. And I'll give everybody a minute to do that. And then if anybody wants to share theirs with the group, feel free to maybe raise your hand or jump into the chat. And I'm just going to set the timer for 1 minute and give everybody a moment. Yeah, lots of work-life balance is really important for everybody. I'm glad to hear that there's such a recognition of that. All right, so go ahead and fill out your career vision statement. And then once we're done with that, we're almost done with the workshop, everybody. It's already 1:39. We only have a couple more slides left in my presentation. We're going to come up with a roadmap that gives you 4 action items for how to go from where you are today to where you want to be. So we'll just take a few more, about 15 more seconds here to complete your career vision statement. And if anybody wants to copy and paste it into the chat, that would be great. I hope you're all able to keep up with the I'm covering a lot of information. I don't know how everybody's keeping up in terms of typing and thinking about these things. So the good news is you can keep this workbook and go off on your own and work on it, later tonight or in the coming days. I encourage you all to use this as a tool for your career. So, all right, so let's go ahead, and I hope you came up with something really compelling. Okay, we've got one. All right. Sheila says, in 1 year, I will be working on a popular consumer-facing product. I will be working with highly engaged, positive people in an environment that allows me to show my authentic self. So that's great. I love that, Sheila. And cheers to you. So, all right. So the last activity, the last part of this workshop is for you to make a plan to tackle the next 4 things that you should do based on that vision statement. So this is your roadmap to landing your dream job. Now, I have really simplified this quite a bit because we don't have a ton of time in the workshop. So if you'd like to go deeper on this, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn and we can continue the conversation if you want to, get any advice or suggestions. But what I want you to commit to doing right now is, number 1, I want you to make a list of target companies based on your vision statement, right? Sheila, I'm talking to you. What are the companies that come to mind when you think about where you can be your authentic self, right? You want to work on a consumer-facing product. What are some companies that are building consumer-facing products today? Make a list of target companies. Number 2, I want you to update your resume and LinkedIn profile to reflect this new career vision. So one thing that is a pretty big mindset shift that people need to make is your resume should be a reflection of the job that you want, not a history of every position you've ever held, right? So I encourage you all to update your resume, keeping in mind the kind of job that you would like to have next. And again, if you need help with any of that stuff, please connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I have lots of resources and free PDFs that you can download. In fact, I think there's a link to my freebies down below if you want to click that. Number 3, I want you to reach out to 5 to 10 people every week who can help you find new opportunities. And I want you to, this is really important because somebody just mentioned, it's sometimes hard to tell during the interview process, right? If there's a bro culture, right? What the culture is like at a company. Using your network and talking to 5 to 10 people every week is going to help inform your knowledge about all these different companies. And I actually think it's really helpful if you can find people who have left those companies, because they're often a little bit more willing to be honest about what their experience was like. And then step 4 is really ultimately you landing a new role. And the way to do that is by leveraging your network and your new vision statement. All right. So before we wrap this up, I just want to put this out there. If you like what I've shared with you today and you would like more resources, I invite you to download. I have a free ebook that I've created with tips to help you be a better product manager. So you can visit the URL to download the free PDF. And I'm also offering a limited number of free career strategy assessment calls that you can apply for. So go to the link and you can download the PDF and sign up for a career strategy call with me. Or you can also go down to the bottom of the screen. There's a link to my blog. I write a lot about various topics, career related for product managers, and I also have lots of freebies. Michelle, I know we're almost out of time. If anybody has a question, I might have time for like one question before we have to wrap up. Anybody have questions for me? I thank you all for joining me. This is such a wonderful experience. Okay, so Cherise is asking, what do you think about taking a career break to level up before looking for the next opportunity? Well, Cherise, I will say this. As a hiring manager, it's usually better. I always like to hire someone who's already in a job. So it's usually better to land a new role when you're still employed. In fact, when recruiters are using LinkedIn to find candidates, passive candidates, there is a checkbox in their dashboard that limits their search to people who are currently in that role, like actively employed. So if you take a break and your LinkedIn profile shows you as no longer in that role, you're not going to show up in the search results for recruiters who are looking for, maybe someone just like you. So I encourage you to try to look for your next opportunity while you're still employed, and then just, do things you can outside of work to level up. I know it's hard. Everybody's so busy, but it really is easier to get a new job when you're still in a role. All right. Okay. Thank you all.
We're
so
at time. Joni, you are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with all of us. Awesome to have a concrete artifact to take away from the workshop today. Props to you.
Great. Thank you all. Please connect on LinkedIn. I look forward to seeing you there.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.